If you don't know me, I'm Kika. So excited you're here. So excited you've joined us tonight. And I am really excited to hop into our conversation tonight, which we are calling Where'd My Joy Go? Where'd my joy go? We all want to live with joy. We all want to have joy in our hearts. And sometimes, some days, we just got to ask ourselves, like, today I'm not really feeling it. And so where'd my joy go? I think I'm doing a lot of the right things, but it feels like I'm not quite there. I don't feel like I have that joy in my heart. And so I'm excited to read this passage, which I think might help us answer some of this, at least an element of this question of where did my joy go? So we're going to go right into it tonight, and we're going to read from Luke chapter 15. You can follow along on the screen here, and we're going to read a story that maybe you've heard before, maybe you haven't, but it's a story called the story of the lost son or the prodigal son. And here is how it goes. We're kind of starting halfway through. The younger son kind of betrays his family, runs away, takes his inheritance from his father, who's actually still alive, crazy enough, and runs away and spoils it all. And at some point, he gets to this place where he decides, you know what? I'm miserable. I've spoiled all my money. I've lost everything I have. And so I've lost my joy. And I've really lost my life. And the only thing that I can think of is maybe I can go back and convince my dad to just let me work for him. I don't need to be part of his family. I just want to work for you because I know I know the people who work for you are alive and they get to eat, and I'm starving out here. So this is how it goes. We're going to get into it. I'm going to stop talking. Verse 22. But the father said to his servants, "Quick, bring the best robe and put it on him." So the son is running back. He's coming back to the house to his father, and the father says, "Quick, bring the best robe and put it on him. Put a ring on his fingers and sandals on his feet. Bring the fattened calf, kill the fattened calf, and kill it. Let's have a feast and celebrate. For this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found." So they began to celebrate. Meanwhile, the older brother was in the field. So this guy's got a brother, and his older brother's in the field. And when he came near the house, he heard music and dancing. So he called one of the servants and asked, "Hey, what's going on? What's happening?" "Your brother has come home," he replied, "and your father has killed the fattened calf because he has him back safe and sound." Here's where it gets interesting. The older brother became angry and refused to go in. So his father went out and pleaded with him. But he answered his father, "Look, all these years I've been slaving for you and never disobeyed your orders, yet you never gave me a young goat so I could celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours has squandered all your property with prostitutes comes home, you kill the fattened calf for him?" "My son," the father said, "you are always with me, or you are always by my side, and everything I have is yours. But we had to celebrate and be glad." I think I missed this one. Maybe behind a little bit. I apologize. "We had to celebrate and be glad because this brother of yours was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found." What a story, right? We've maybe heard this story a few times, and we maybe sometimes focus on certain elements of the story, but tonight I want to focus on an element that I think I personally have missed before many times. So some of you might know I'm married, although I never wear my ring, not because I want to look like I'm not married, but because I forget to put it on because I don't like to sleep on it. But I'm married, and through my dating years, Rachel, she and I would hang out often. But sometimes when we would hang out, I'd be sitting on the couch, she'd be sitting on the couch too, and she'd be happy and excited and talking, and I'm like, I have my phone out, and I'm chilling. And I'm like, yeah, cool. But I'm really not really engaged in the conversation. I'm not really focused. I've got things that I'm doing, people that I'm responding to, whatever it is that I'm doing on my phone. So I'm there. I'm by her side. I'm next to her. But I'm not really there. Like, I'm there, but I'm not really there. Like some of you guys maybe live with a roommate, or you even live with some of your parents, and you know what it's like when, you live together, you use the same kitchen, use the same bathroom. You may even be sleeping in the same room, but there's a difference between, like, spending time together and getting to know them and being present with them, and then there's something else that's just like, we're there. Like, I'm by your side. I'm there in the same space as you. And so what I learned over the years is that me being next to Rachel, me being in the same room as her, me being with her or by her side is not sufficient for a healthy relationship. Good one, right? Like, it took me that long to figure that out. But that's really how it is. Like, sometimes we can be in the same space as somebody for so long, and we don't know them. We don't get to know them. I've lived on a college campus for a few years, and with some of my roommates, we were literally that. We were just roommates. And maybe some of you have experienced that. Maybe some of you will experience that. You don't know each other, even though you spend so much time in the same space. Spend so much time in the same space. Now, I think, can we go back? Let's see if this works. Yes. Okay, now look at this. Look at this verse. This is the NLT translation. I love how it says it here. The older son, his younger brother comes home, and he's kind of like annoyed. He's angry that his younger brother's coming home, which you would think, like, okay, your brother's home. Like, you should be a little excited. You should be happy for him. You should be happy that he's home. But it seems like he's upset. And I love what the father says. His father said to him, "Look, dear son, you have always stayed by me. Always stayed by me. And everything I have is yours." Now, let's talk a quick backstory, okay? So the person telling this story is Jesus. And Jesus is talking to a crowd where there's like half of the crowd is one certain type of group, and the other half of the crowd is another kind of group. The first half is like, this is the group of people who are like religious, who like go to church, who have been to church their whole life, and follow all the rules and read the scriptures and all that. The other side of this crowd that Jesus is telling the story to is the complete opposite of that. It's people who have really want to do nothing with God, have no desire to be at a church, no desire to be in that kind of space. And so he's talking to these two crowds, and he's telling this story, and he's using this story as a metaphor to communicate to both groups. One is the older brother, and one is the younger brother. The older brother is the group of people who are religious, who are always, at church, who are always reading the scriptures, who are always doing that. And the other side is the people who are not interested, who are not really going into that at all. And if I, look around the room, I think for the most part, there's a lot of people here like me who have always stayed by me. We've always really been around religion. Maybe our parents are religious. Maybe we go to a religious community where we have our friends. We hang out here. We go to church. We go to a small group. We do whatever it is. We spend a lot of time by the father, who in this story, the father in this story is the kid's father, but metaphorically, Jesus speaking, is talking about God. He's talking about God the Father. A lot of us, maybe I'm speaking for myself, but I think when I look at this room, a lot of us have stayed by his side. And if we're asking this question, where'd my joy go? I wonder if this might be a key here, because think about it, right? Like if you're having a hard time, if you're having a difficult time in your life, and you're around church people or religious people, maybe one of the questions that they ask you when you tell them that you're having a hard time is like, "Oh, honey, like, have you spent enough time with God? Like, have you spent enough time with God, because he's gonna bring you joy?" And so I'm like, yeah, I have actually, like, I haven't missed a Sunday since I was 0 years old. Like, I've been, I read my Bible pretty consistently. Like, I listen to worship songs when I come to church, and sometimes maybe even in my car. Like, I am around God all the time. I'm around God all the time, and you would think that if you are always by God's side, that He would give you joy. Like, if I'm by His side, we as maybe a Christian community or people who are religious think that if I'm close to God, that I'm going to have a relationship with Him that brings me joy. But we look at the story of the son, and he's always stayed by his father. And when his brother comes home, his father is ecstatic. He's so excited, he throws the biggest party on the block, and people are like, oh, wow, what's going on? The brother comes home, what's going on? What's this party? And so you would think that what brings the father joy should bring his son joy, because if you're really close to each other, what brings him joy should also bring you joy. But you look at this, and he has no joy in this story. He has no joy in this story. He tells his father, Father, I have been slaving away for you, never disobeyed your orders, and still, I don't feel like, I don't know, this just doesn't seem right. This doesn't seem fair, and I'm not joyful in this situation. Why doesn't he have joy? Why is this situation not bringing him joy? So, I come from an Arab background. I think some of you in this room, Middle Eastern background, we got a pretty good representation in here. And for those of us who come from that background, we understand that in that culture, there's some sort of responsibility or duty that you have to your family. So if your family is sick, or they've raised you, so you feel like you have to honor them and respect them and love them by supporting them, being close to them when they need it. If they have a business, you support the business. You spend your time with them. You spend family time with them, because that's part of your duty as a person in the family. And in this culture where Jesus is telling this story, this is the exact same kind of culture. The son has the duty to the father, because, hey, the father has a business, the father has a house, he's got servants, he's got people, and the sons are supposed to be there, and they're supposed to continue on this legacy that he started. And so the older brother is the one who actually continues this legacy. The older brother is the one who's actually sticking around. He's the one who's slaving away. He's the one who's obeying his orders. The younger son, the son who comes home, he actually did one of the most shameful things that you can do in that culture. By him asking for his inheritance, he's literally telling his dad, Dad, I wish you were dead so that I could take the money that I would have gotten after you died and go live my life. I want nothing to do with you. I just want to take my money because I value that more than I value you. And so any other father in this culture would have maybe even killed this kid for doing something like that. But the older son, he's this good boy, he's a great kid. He says, no, I want to honor my father. I'm going to live out here, and I might not even enjoy it, but I'm going to do it because I have a duty to it. This is my duty. This is what I'm called to do as my father's son. And so he starts to live with his dad, but he's living with him out of a sense of duty. And in living out of a sense of duty, he starts to miss the relationship that he could have with his father. He's always by his side. He's always living around his father, but that's just it. He's just doing it because it's his duty. He's supposed to do it. Now, I wonder how many of us are, always by his side, always even by our family side, always by our religious affiliation side, because it's our duty. It's like what our parents expected us to do. It's what even I expect myself to do. This is how I'm supposed to live. I know, like, God wants me to go to church. God wants me to listen to him and obey him and live by his standards. So, okay, I'm going to do that because that's my duty. But when we live out of a duty to somebody or to something, we're not living out of devotion. So there's a difference between living out of a duty and living out of a devotion for someone. Have you ever heard this phrase, ride or die? You see it on, like, bike riders, like leather jackets, big red letters, ride or die, with like a skull and red feathers or something. I don't know what they got, but there's this phrase, ride or die, where it's like, man, I would die. Like, I don't know. I think bikers use it because it's like they just would either ride their bicycle or they'll die. But it's become part of our phrase in our culture, where it's like, yo, you're my ride or die. Like, if I'm not with you, you know, I can't, I'm gonna die. Like, I would die for you. You're my ride or die. I would die for you. I think that's what that phrase. At least that's what I think it means. Could be wrong. That's where we're gonna go. Okay, James is giving me the nod. Like, yeah, you got it. Okay, I'm gonna die for you. Okay, you don't become a ride or die for somebody when you're just around them, when you're by their side. You don't become your roommate's ride or die because you share the same space. You don't become, you know, your family's ride or die because you just live in the same house. You don't become God's ride or die because you've always stayed by him. Because if you've always just stayed by him, you're living out of a duty. I'm supposed to be doing this. I don't know, my pastor said I'm supposed to be doing this. My family said I'm supposed to be doing this. But when I live out of a duty rather than a devotion, the joy that I have starts to fade away. And you see it in this story. The older brother, his joy has faded. When his father is celebrating, he is mourning. When his father is partying, he's angry and he's feeling betrayed even. How could this happen? Are we living out of duty or are we living out of devotion? There's a big distinction for us. There's Psalm 8. Let me see if we can, I think we have it over here. Psalm 8. This is King David. He's a king. King David. He writes this passage, he writes this psalm, and he says this, when I look at your heavens, he's talking about God. When I look at your heavens, the work of your fingers, the moons and the stars, which you have set in place, what is man? Who am I? What am I that you are mindful of him? And the Son of Man, that you care for him. See, this isn't someone who's living out of a duty. This is someone who's living out of devotion. This is someone who recognizes that his God is a God who is magnificent, all-powerful, all-knowing. He's incredible. And oh my, you care about me? Who am I? What is man? Who am I that you care for me? Who am I that you are mindful of me? See, this is someone who's living out of devotion, who recognizes that, man, I don't even deserve to be in your presence. I don't even deserve to know you, yet you have called me your child. You have wanted me as one of your own. Wow. Wow, if this is true, I want to devote myself to you. I want to be your ride or die. This brings me so much joy to know that you care for me in this kind of way. And maybe the older brother is just, he's living out of a duty. He's not seeing how incredible his father is. He's not seeing him as this amazing person. He's just like, he's there because he's supposed to be there. King David, the king, who people would look to him and say this exact thing. Man, David, look at your kingdom. Look at how much money you have. Look at all of the people that want to be around you. Wow, I would love to just hang out with you. I'd love to get coffee with you. And King David is saying this about God because he recognizes how incredible God is, that I'm not even just an afterthought, but he wants to be with me. He wants a relationship with me. So when we get into this space, which I know I've been there, and I'm sure there are some of us in this room who are there ourselves, of, we're feeling like, I don't know where my joy is. Where'd my joy go? I'm still at church. I'm still, around God and around other people of faith. Shouldn't my joy shouldn't I have joy? Where'd it go? And I wonder if we have started to live out of faith, out of a duty, rather than out of devotion. I wonder if we've become a little bit more like the older brother who are seeing the father as someone that they just have to be there for him, rather than someone that they're just, wow, who am I that you care for me? Who am I that you are mindful of me? This is the ride or die kind of lifestyle. And it's really interesting. Jesus, later on, he'll say something like this in Matthew 16. He says something a little bit challenging to people who want to follow him. He tells them, whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves, take up their cross, and follow me. And there's this author, I read this book in college, one of the most challenging books I've ever read, by this guy named Dietrich Bonhoeffer. He died during the Holocaust trying to save Jews and try to kill Hitler. And he wrote this. He said, when Christ calls a man, he bid him come and die. And he's really talking about this verse. And he's saying, man, when Jesus calls us to follow him, he's not really calling us to this, this kind of life that like, I'm by his side, I'm around him, but I'm just going to keep doing what I enjoy doing, what I love doing that might really go counter to what he wants. But I'm going to live in a way that, like, if I'm the older brother in this situation, and I know that my younger brother betrayed my family, and I know that my dad has been pretty tough with not really wanting to spend money on me or whatever it is, when my brother comes home and I see my dad celebrating, I'm going to die to myself, and I'm going to live for him. Because I know that following him sometimes, like Sarah was saying earlier, might be a little uncomfortable. It might put us in situations where, like, I'm not really sure that this is what's best, but you know what? I'm going to trust this God. I'm going to trust this Father because as I follow him, he's calling me to trust in him, to trust that what he's doing, what he knows, what he says is best. It's no longer about me when I follow him. It's all about him. So if we look at this older brother, and maybe we even feel like, I think I might feel like that a little bit. I think I might be a little bit upset with God, and I'm not finding joy. Well, then how do we find joy? How do we get to a place where I can get my joy back? How do I get to a place where, man, I want to live for you, Jesus, in a way that brings me joy, but that also it's not just about me anymore. I want to live in a way that is about you. How can I get my joy back? And here is where we look to the other brother, to the younger brother. See, the younger brother, when he was coming back home, he says something really interesting in verse 21. And I don't think we even had this on here, but he says this, Father, when he saw him, he says, Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you, and I am no longer worthy to be called your son. I'm no longer worthy to be called your son. I don't deserve to be in your presence. I've betrayed you. I've turned against you. I've lived the way that I wanted. I've even shamed you in front of our entire community. I don't deserve to be around you. He comes in humility. He comes with a recognition that, man, you are so good and I am so not. I don't deserve to be around you. You are so good. Just like King David was saying, man, who am I? Who am I that you would be mindful of me? Who am I that you would care for me? The Father looks to him and he says, man, I know you feel a little guilt. I know you feel shame. I know you feel like this is just a hopeless situation for you. But I'm not just going to take you in as my slave. I'm not just going to take you in as my servant. I want to take you back as my child, my beloved child. And there's nothing that you can do, no matter how bad it is, no matter how bad people see you in my community, I'm going to take you back. So he comes in to the Father completely humble because he recognizes who he is, his Father is, and who he is in comparison to that. And so there are three things that this son does that I think we can do. To the son, he looks to his father and he sees how great of a character his father has, how incredible of a person he is. And then he comes to him with an attitude of humility. Man, I don't really deserve to be here. I don't really deserve to be in your presence. And then he takes a step, the last step that he takes, is rather than just living by the side of his father, he takes a step into his Father's arms, into a relationship that's not just living out of a duty, but living out of a devotion. I cannot believe, Father, that you would let me come back to you. I do not believe that you would let me have a relationship with you, but wow, thank you. Thank you for offering that to me. I want to take a step into your presence. And I know for myself, I have struggled with this. Even in the past few weeks, I was reading my Bible. I was reading a devotional, and it was literally a devotional about God's power. He's all-knowing, all-powerful, all of these things. He's just like this incredible God. And I read it, and I was like, cool. Moving on. Where's my breakfast? I'm ready for my day to start. And I had to literally pause myself. I think I shared this with some of you. I had to pause my day, and I said, I cannot believe that I just read about how incredible God is, and I just was ready to move on. I started to recognize that in these times, I'm just living by God's side. I'm just spending time because it's my duty. I'm supposed to do a quiet time. I'm supposed to spend time reading my Bible. That's it. I'm just doing it. And I had to literally stop. I said, I'm not going to eat breakfast until I literally step into the presence of God, until I take a moment to really recognize how incredible this God is. I want to stop living by his side. The older brother, the father says he's always by my side. So many of us in this room are always by his side. We are. I see you every week coming in. And if you're wondering, where's my joy? I thought that living a life with Christ is supposed to bring me joy. I thought living a life of faith is supposed to give me this joy that other people who maybe aren't living in this faith don't have. I thought we were different. What's the difference? I don't sense it anymore. And if you're anything like me, maybe it's time for us to recognize that we are always by his side, but not always in his presence. We are always living for him out of a sense of duty rather than out of a sense of devotion. Oh, who am I? Who am I? Wow. God, you're incredible. This is amazing that you want me to be by your side. It's amazing that you're going to let me in. And as the band comes back up to close this, I want us to look at these 3 points and practice them. Like, can we really try and say, you know what, I'm going to try this right now. I'm going to try to recognize how incredible God is. I'm going to try to then recognize myself as someone who does not deserve to be in his presence, and I'm going to come humbly before him. I don't deserve, God, to be in your presence. I don't deserve to know you. I don't deserve to be in a space where we worship you. Like your presence is here, God, and you're letting us be here. Who am I? Who am I? And then when I'm in his presence, when I've come to him in humility, recognizing who he is, his goodness, his power, I'm going to humbly take a step into his presence. Not just a step by his presence, not just a step around his presence, not just a step into Lighthouse Night. I'm going to take a step into his presence. The almighty, all-loving, all-forgiving, all-powerful God who sees me not as a slave, not as a throwaway, not as an afterthought, not as someone who's not worthy to be seen, worthy to be loved, worthy of my time, but no, you are my child. I've called you by name. I've run to you, brought the fattened calf, killed it, threw the biggest party because I love you. And I want you not just to be by my side. I want you to be in my presence. I don't want to just be roommates. I want to be soulmates. I want to be best friends. I want us to have a relationship that's not just we're around each other all the time. You're distracted by your iPad or your phone or your friends or even your church. I want you to step into my presence. I don't just want you to step into my church. I want you to step into my presence. I want you to hear my voice. I want to hear it as I call you by name. You are my child. I would give up everything so that we could have a relationship. We have to come in with humility. Say, God, I'm not enough unless you come. Will you meet me here again?